Hey, everybody, welcome to our brand new episode in 2024 of the Hot Rod BBQ podcast. Our first guest of the year is none other than Vinny Russo. My man, how are you doing today, brother?
Fantastic. I can't believe you're starting the year off with me. I feel so honored to set the tone for the rest of the year.
The whole tone, this podcast is all about Vinny. It's about Vinny's life, his past, what's going on in the industry. You are the tastemaker for 24, son.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm excited. I'm very excited and honored and honored. I
How you
wanted to make the
doing?
podcast about something more positive, but given the news over the last couple of days, I feel like this is going to end up being a slight little bit of a rant. Uh,
Well, there's a reason. So, if anybody's been following in the news lately, in the automotive news, there was a big post out there that Stellantis is pulling out of all auto shows.
yeah.
I don't want to say all. They're going to be very selective about what shows they do.
Yes. And I mean, they pulled out of SEMA last year. They pulled out of
Yep.
LA Auto Show last year. They are not going to be at CES this year.
Right.
And the big announcement was Chicago Auto Show. And with that came an announcement that they essentially, reading between the lines, said that they're as a Stellantis corporate entity will no longer be attending auto shows. They will back their dealers if the dealers want to foot the bill to do it.
Yeah.
But they essentially are saying that they feel like they're whatever their reasons being, and there's a ton of quotes we can get into as far as the reasonings for it. But I mean, to read between the lines, they're basically saying that look, auto shows don't work anymore. We can get more headway doing internets and press releases and things like that. And so we're just not going to do that. And I completely disagree. To an extent. I mean, listen, there is some
Sure.
facts in saying that, yes, you can get more eyes on things, by doing things on the internet and whatnot. But I think what they're missing, and this isn't for all of their brands, but being that Stellantis has brands like Maserati and Alfa Romeo and their
Sure.
SRT
Yep.
teams and things like that, the company as a whole does, they have to carry some of these brands that have a very emotional connection to their owners. Granted, you can get a charger at Avis and rent a V6 charger, and it's very utilitarian and it is what it is.
Mhm.
But when you've also got cars like the Maserati MC20, that's a car that needs to be seen and experienced. There's some of their brands have, they need to be heard, they need to be touched and felt and smelled. When it comes to the leather, and you can't do that on the internet, and you can't always just take the word for journalists like yourself or
Mhm.
influencers. I hate to use that word that I don't consider
Sure.
myself an influencer, but yeah, I can say all day long that this is neat, but like there's a connection there. And so what kind of spurred this was that I was talking to a friend of mine who's a general manager at one of the Maserati dealers, and we were at an event in Beverly Hills 2 years ago, and they had a display there. And Maserati has the Levante SUV,
Sure.
and they had it on display. And this gentleman came up, and listen, this is Beverly Hills. This is home of where you would expect to see Maseratis. And
Sure.
this gentleman came up while we were talking, and it's like, hey, this is a really neat truck. I can't believe, when did Maserati come out with an SUV? And at this point, the Levante had been out for years.
Huh.
And this guy had never seen it, never heard
Yeah.
about it, never experienced it, didn't see it parked anywhere, nothing. So when I worked at Maserati, and the Levante launch, one of the things that we would, have the dealers do, or that I asked the dealers to do from a marketing perspective, is, take their Levante, take their Ghibli, whatever they have, and go
Sure.
out to the hottest restaurant, park it out and valet it. And
Hmm.
don't tell the valet to do anything, just give it to the valet and go inside and have dinner and come back out. And every time that they had done this, it's parked out front. And it didn't
Yeah.
matter if it was a Ghibli, a Quattroporte, or at the time a Levante. Range Rover gets parked in the back. Mercedes gets parked in the back.
Right.
That Trident doesn't go in
Hmm.
back because
Yeah.
the restaurant owner and the valets know what that symbol means. And granted, the majority of the people on the street are not going to know what a Quattroporte is. They're not going to know what a Ghibli is. But if you say
Hmm.
Maserati,
Don't know what a Maserati.
they know
Yeah.
what a Maserati is.
So
And it,
it's interesting though because I mean I look at auto shows right now, right? And when you think of the big ones, you think of LA, you think of Chicago, you think of New York, right? The big three auto shows.
yeah,
Um, for what OEMs spend on auto shows, right? and kind of we've seen it in the industry. The amount of money they spend on an auto show, you have to wonder if it's going to be better spent if they're going to do it at, online, if they're going to do targeted marketing videos with set influencers on set shows, things like that. Product placement is so much to these things. And I mean, I think of it like this. The last time I was auto shows for me, and I think you and myself, we grew up going to auto shows because that's what there were. You would go, you would look at the concept cars, and you would see everything, and it was an amazing experience. You could walk up, you could touch, and just kind of drool. But now, like, I haven't personally been to an auto show, like in New York or in LA or in years. And I think the reason is that we get inundated right now with so much media on these cars on the internet that there's not that much reason for me to go to an auto show. I look at it in the sense where, like, are they great? Sure. And it's fun. And for us in the industry, it's great because we can go out and we can talk to our friends and we can see everybody and we can talk to the representatives.
Right.
But if I'm really interested in a vehicle, I'll go to a dealer and I'll look at it. And here's the other thing. I was talking to Ryan, and Ryan's back there. He's the producer, obviously, and he's just hidden right now. But like, I'm interested in the new Toyota Land Cruiser that's coming out. Right now, did I see it at SEMA? I did. It was at SEMA, and I did kind of I walked around it and looked at it, and it was really interesting to see. However, I'm waiting for my off-road influencer, Mr. Ryan, to road test it and get his feedback. And that's going to really base my decision. Now, if he says it's good, I'm probably going to go, okay, well, now I'm going to head to the dealer based on what he says, because he's the expert on those things.
Sure.
Whereby, do I have to go to a dealer or do I have to go to an auto show to see it in person when I can go online and I can see, 50 videos on it? And that's a little easier. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying I can kind of understand why the OEMs are doing this.
Well,
to your point, I understand that different marks absolutely need to be at the auto shows.
Yeah.
So,
and I think it's hard for us to take, when we would go to the auto shows and be excited about it, we weren't in the industry like we are now.
Correct.
So it's very difficult for us to take that part of it out of the equation because, like you said, you go to the auto shows, you see, people that and you hang out and you do whatever.
Sure.
It turns into a whole big thing. But if you look back at, when we were at the auto show and excited about it, we didn't have the influencers, we didn't have the YouTube, we didn't have that kind of stuff. That was our choice. We would leave there with a bag of posters and flyers and all kinds of things like that. And you don't do that anymore. And I think that a better way to look at it is like, when Dodge decided to launch the 170, they did it at Roadkill, as opposed to doing it at one of the auto shows because it was a little bit more of a targeted market as far as that goes. But no, you're going to say something, or?
Well, Dodge launched it at their own event, not at a Roadkill. So they did.
Wasn't that the first time anybody publicly saw those?
Yes, it was, but it wasn't.
Okay, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
So the first time the public, like a general, and like anybody off the street, the first time anybody got to see it in person,
they
did do it at Roadkill. They didn't do it at
correct.
the auto show. They didn't do it whatever they did at Roadkill.
Correct.
So my point was that, for the right brand, the right car, I think a targeted launch, but they shouldn't do away with the experiential part of it because, again, things like, in Dodge's case, like the Hornet, a little bit more of a utilitarian car, and it's targeting a slightly different market.
Yeah.
But I think that, there still is there's a place for the cars that needed the emotional connection.
Oh yeah.
Things like the 170 or the MC20 or, a Jeep, a Jeep Wrangler. I mean, especially with something like a Wrangler, there's a lot of little details in the Wrangler that you get a chance to experience when you have your hands on it. This door comes off and this thing opens, and the buttons are thicker and all of these things. And then you go to the delership and you're inundated by these asinine, non-educated, sales guys that are reading through their script going, so what can I help you with today? And
I know, dude.
What's it going to take to put you in this right now?
Yeah.
Like, okay, so like that's annoying as well.
So the fact that what they said, they're not pulling out of all auto shows. The way that I read it was that they're being very selective on where they go with these vehicles. Right.
Basically,
so like,
yeah.
I feel as though like if like I have no problem if they pull out of a New York or an LA show or anything like that. But if there's a big like Wrangler's a perfect example. If there's a big off road show, whether it's Lone Star Roundup or whatever the big off road shows are, those are shows that yes, they absolutely need to be there because that is their core audience, that is their constituency, and to your point, you need to feel that, you need to touch it, you need to be able to climb inside and out, and at a dealer you can't do that.
Here's
You could kind of because the dealers themselves make you want to punch them all in the face.
here's what the auto show brings to the table that your example doesn't, though, is what if I'm in the market for a new car?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what I want. Now, if you're going in very specifically to target, I need a minivan, I need a truck, I need this, I need
Yeah,
that, fine. But like, I think I'm ready for a new car. So you go to the auto show and all of a sudden you see a Wrangler that you had never considered. I've seen them on the road. I don't want to be a Jeep person, da da da. But all of a sudden you
sure.
walk up to it, you look at it, and you're like, I kind of like that. My
Yeah,
cell phone will fit there. My kid will fit in the back seat. I have a dog. I have this, I have that, da, da. Next thing you know, like something you didn't consider, but because you were able to see it in person, because you were able to see the dimensions, because you were able to sit in it and touch and feel
sure.
it, maybe you consider it. Now, it's not a listen, none of this is if we had the key to all of this, we would, we would be billionaires, we would be doing podcasts. So there's a lot going into it, but I think that it's scary to think about the dealers pulling out of, and it's not just the OEMs, and not the dealers, but the OEMs, for them to start pulling out of a lot of these experiential type events,
Yeah,
targeting and spending their money more on influencers, and which I think needs to be a part of it.
yeah,
I think that to just do away with putting your product in front of the customers and just doing it digitally and just doing it online and things like that, you're getting away from a whole segment of what the experience of owning a car, shopping for a car, buying a car, it is. I mean, it's, the Carvanas of the world where I just go and I buy a car online and they show up at my house and deliver it. It's utilitarian, and there's a
it,
time and a place for it.
I mean, have you so I'm trying to think. I think I know two people who have bought. I mean, I think our group is different, right? When
Yeah,
you and I would never go and just buy a car sight unseen, right? We would make an effort to go wherever it was and to
yeah,
to uncover everything about it and look at it and sit in it and drive it. And our goal is to know more than everybody else out there than the
yeah.
general public. So the experiential part of it, I totally agree with. Um, but there are people out there, and I think this is the shift, right? There are people out there that, and I have a friend of mine that does this. He goes, "Oh, I just bought a car. Oh, what'd you buy? I bought an Explorer. Where'd you buy it? I bought it on Carvana. Did you go look at it? No, I just saw it online." I'm like, "But you've never sat in it. You don't know if you fit in it. You don't know if it, like, what? How could you?" And I was so mind blown. Like, how do you even know you're gonna like it, man?
Well,
You
I
know?
mean, as car guys, I'm sure you and I know I do get tons of calls from neighbors and friends and family that
Oh
aren't
yeah.
in
What
the
about
industry.
this?
Hey, what should I do? I want to buy a car. What should I do? And I always tell them, one of the main things I tell them is take it home. Take
Yeah.
it. Don't do the test drive with the four right turns and come right back to the dealership and then go, okay, now you're in the car for 5 or 6
Yeah.
years. I've had friends that bought cars that they didn't have a place to put their cell phone. And 3 days
Oh,
into owning
absolutely.
the car, they're pissed off. I've had friends that bought cars that didn't fit in their garage. I've had friends that, all of a sudden you go into a parking lot and it's got a blind spot that they didn't know about so I tell them, I was like, take it home for
Will
a
the dealers let you? Will a
yes.
modern dealer let you take a car
Yes,
home?
there are some that will, there are some that won't. But at the very, very least, and listen, you have to remember it's inconvenient slightly, but you're making a 5-year commitment.
Correct.
You're not going to marry a girl without taking her out on a date. You
Correct.
you know, so you at the very least you tell the dealer, okay, well, I'm going to be here at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. I'm going to take the car for the day. You close at 7 o'clock. I'll bring it back then.
Yeah.
You take the day, you take it to work. You park it in the parking lot at work. You park it in your thing. You try and put your car seat in there. You set your presets on the radio. I mean, listen, I've been in rental cars where I'm trying to scroll through the satellite radio and it won't let me scroll the way that I
Oh,
want to change the stations, and it drives me absolutely crazy. So like, but you wouldn't know that if you didn't experience it firsthand. So like there is a certain amount, and this is not everybody cares. I mean, listen,
mhm.
let's be honest. I mean, not everybody cares about the radio stations about the air vents not blowing in the right direction,
Right.
and I
Right.
mean, what are all those little things? But I promise you that over time, as you have that car a few years, there's are going to be things that you look back and you say, I should have seen that when I, if I test drove it, I spent more time.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Some of it's
I think,
livable, some of it's annoying.
yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I think buying a car right now is a difficult proposition, right? Because the model of going to the dealer, like I'm obviously going to go to a dealer. The biggest problem with most dealers is that, to your point, they're 100% uneducated. It's very rare to go into a dealer and have a salesperson come up and know stuff about the car. It's just they don't take the time, right? They're on commission. They want to move them as fast as they can, and they really don't care. I've gone to dealers and been interested in buying cars, and I've said, listen, I'm going to take this out in the parking lot. I just need to sit in it for 45 minutes and figure out what everything does. Okay, well, we have to get your signature here. No, you don't. All you have to do is be a salesman and open the goddamn door and let me sit in and play with it so I see if I like it or not.
Yeah.
Right?
Let's run your credit first. No.
Yeah, let's run your credit. Let's go out and to your point again. Let's do four right turns and then bring it back to the dealer. No, let's sit in traffic for 45 minutes and see what it does. The problem is these things are very difficult to do. But from an experiential standpoint, I think that's where programs like not necessarily the big auto shows, but the smaller auto shows that are out there, whether it's a roadkill, whether it's a Hemmings event, whether it's whatever the events are, whether it's parking out in front of a restaurant or taking them to Pebble Beach so people can actually see them.
Yeah. That's
the most important thing. Because I've seen cars online where I'm like, wow, that's really nice. And then I've seen it in person. I was like, the hell was I thinking?
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see how the OEMs are going to address this, because I think there's going to be some backlash by the public because, we want to see these things in person. We want to get in them. We want to feel what the materials are like.
Yeah.
And I almost feel like, some OEMs are trying to keep you from doing that. And the only thing that they want to do is kind of hook you in, get you to sign, and then figure out you made a mistake afterwards. Right.
Well, and as a consumer, it's our responsibility to let these people know, the OEMs and any company, it's our responsibility to let them know that, this is what we want. The problem is, I think with people's attention spans right now, they're so inconvenienced by spending any time on anything because they'd rather sit there and scroll Instagram or try and be, a TikToker than actually do what's responsible. I mean, I use the example, like, let's look at Uber Eats. Now, I use Uber Eats. I mean, we all do now, right?
Sure.
I mean, so let's try and fathom for just a second, how many times a day, a month, a year, Uber Eats around the country is sending food out. And to me, what I thought about the other day is, every time I order from Uber Eats, I am withholding an experience to myself that I could have gone into that restaurant, even if I just go there and pick it up and take it back home.
Sure.
I'm missing out on the ambiance of there. I'm missing out on the relationship that we had with restaurant owners and cooks. That you walk into a place that you go to every week and you say, listen, it's nothing for you to put every Friday, I'm going to order the same thing from this restaurant. It used to be we would go to the restaurant every Friday.
Sure.
You knew the people that were in there. Maybe you run into a friend.
Yeah.
Maybe you see a girl at the bar that all of a sudden you find interesting. All of these experiences that you're interacting with are gone now. And with every one of those Uber Eats transactions, you're losing that. And it's the same thing with Carvana. Every time somebody buys a car like that, they're losing a little bit of that, just that experience and learning about, just how the world works and the interaction. And we're getting further and further away from, having any kind of influence over what the future holds.
Well, dude, people don't, I mean, a lot of times people don't want to interact. And I think it's, we're of a generation that you would like to have conversations, right? Like if we go into a restaurant, you'd say hi to the owner, hi to the waiter, whatever the case is. You go to a dealer, you talk to the dealer, you'd want to know who they are, you'd want to make a relationship. Where now people they don't really have, I don't know if it's they don't have the time or they don't want to take the time or they're not concerned with it. But I think we've turned into somewhat of a selfish society where we always think that our time is more valuable than everybody else's. Right. And people forget that, you do have to take a step back. It's okay to sit down and throw your phone away for a couple of hours and just have an actual conversation. And, that's the thing about experiences that I'm starting to miss. because these experiences are going away.
Yeah.
Be it an auto show, like I said, I'm not a massive auto show guy, but I am a big events guy. So if there's an event, I will absolutely go to an event because that I love. So, like, for instance, if we go to a Cars and Coffee, like OEMs, my God, if they just latched on to some of the biggest Cars and Coffees in the United States and brought a car out for 2 or 3 hours every Sunday morning, you would have so many people that would just touch it and get in it and ask the questions. Those are where the really enthusiasts are, right? Sometimes I think auto shows get inundated with too many people, become too corporate, where if we could target those events and get the vehicles there, we might have a little more success with the car sales.
I think that overall there needs to be more just interaction with people back and forth. I mean, so, when I did the Hot Wheels events these past year, you're talking 200 to 300 cars of the weirdest spread of cars you could ever imagine at any Cars and Coffee or show. I mean, custom made things that are barely street legal, all the way up to like full blown customs and things like that. And I heard it time and time again over the course of last year that the guy with the old school muscle car is talking to the guy with the recently imported JDM car, and they both have respect for what they did, but they both would say, I would have never seen this car.
Yeah.
Because they don't go to the same car meets the muscle car guy goes. The custom built guy is talking to the guy with the JDM, the newer kid who bought his first Honda and he's bringing it to this, to this event, and may not have gone to a ton of car shows, and these old timer guys are giving them a little, here's what you do and here's how you talk to the judges and all these things like that, and there's an interaction there that you wouldn't normally get. I bought a BMW motorcycle this past year, an R18 bagger, which is kind of new to the market that nobody's seen before. And I was at the doctor's office the other day, and I took it there. I had my helmet. The doctor's like, "Hey, what are you riding?" And I'm like, "Oh, I got a new BMW." He's like, "Oh, I didn't know BMW made a bagger like that." So we got done, and the doctor is walking out into the parking lot with me, and I'm showing him around the motorcycle. And I think that people don't take the time. Listen, I'm not getting paid by BMW to do that.
Of course.
Whatever, but listen, I like the bike. I'm going to give him the pros and cons of what I thought about it, and now this guy's walking away with a little bit more education of out there, and it's our responsibility as enthusiasts to continue to fan that flame in every chance you get. And it doesn't matter if you're in a Lamborghini or a Lancia or a pickup truck.
Sure.
Whatever it happens to be, if somebody's interested, take the time. If you see a kid excited about it, you're taking pictures of your car, don't shoo them away. Like,
absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, so there's all kinds of stories out there. And I just think that everybody is in such a rush that I think that we're letting the electronic, the EVs, and we're letting all of these, people, it's going to turn everything in our hobby so numb that it's going to make it very difficult for the next generation to even understand why we're so passionate about what we do and why we are.
That I agree with 100%. I think, it's trying to get younger people involved, trying to get them into the vehicles and touch the vehicles. And so much of that, again, it goes back to your point where it is the owner's responsibility. It is the responsibility of guys like you, like myself, like Ryan, like all of us, to make these vehicles accessible. I'm not saying that you have to go and say, "Hey, you want to drive my stuff?" No, but if somebody asks a question, take 5 minutes to answer them, right? Yeah. Show them around, show them nuance. Try to get them as excited about the vehicles as you are, as that enthusiast, because so many things have been changing in the last couple of years, that the vehicles that are coming out now, while some of them are very fast and all this other stuff, they're losing that personality. They're losing that relationship factor, I think, that so many of us have with certain vehicles that we really love. And I'm kind of curious to see where it goes. I'm kind of curious to see where somebody who's, I don't know, like what is a 10-year-old looking at right now, right? Yeah. Like poster cars are, well, I don't even know if they're posters anymore, to be perfectly honest with you.
It's wallpaper cars. Yeah, desktop cars.
Desktop cars, right? I mean, what's a 10-year-old putting on his desktop? What is the most chosen car in Forza Motorsports or Gran Turismo? right?
Yeah.
What are the kids, what do they want? And are they content with just playing them on a video game as opposed to actually going out and trying to obtain them,
Hard to
right?
say.
Like that, I'm really curious about, and I don't
Like,
know, I don't
I
know where
like
they get
the
the answer to that.
I like this stance that like, so when I worked with John Tamarian at We Are Curated down in Miami, and he specializes in a lot of these vintage supercars, very, very rare things. His mindset and his attitude about it is that, the idea behind curated is that basically like you have these cars, but as owners, as they buy and sell these cars, they are they know that they're keeping them going for the next generation. Your cars, for instance, no, we're losing you. Your cars, for instance, are basically yours for now, but when you're gone, somebody else is going to have that car. And somebody else is going to own it after you. And then if all goes well, after them, there will be somebody else as well. And somebody had that car before you. So even though you own that car now, you're just part of that car's life expectancy or lifespan, and you're supposed to, kind of take care of this car and pass that torch to the next owner and say, you know what, here's what I did with the car for the 20 years I had it. And now I want you to have it for another 20 years and do something with it and just move it on to the next, to the next owner. And so
Right.
if you can take that mindset and understand that you have a responsibility to this industry. I mean, this is something that our generation now is just now coming into. I mean, we're buying cars off of our parents that, they bought new in the 60s and nobody had it before them. And now we have a responsibility that we're getting older, that we're getting out of those cars and getting into something else. We have to pass those on to somebody else that understands that, look, it's your responsibility to tell this story, to continue this lifespan of this car. This car is going to be around probably, if you don't fuck it up, is going to be around longer than you
Yeah.
are. And as the history gets added to it, and guys like Ed Bolian with Vin Wiki are, so that you're able to tell the story of the car and follow its lifetime, that's what's going to really get interesting about it. But if you don't take the time to do that, if you don't take the time to share with somebody, if you don't take the time to pass it on the owner, I mean, listen, you take your car to the auction and you toss it off and it's done. Like nobody gets to hear the stories about what happened and what you did with it and things like that. I mean, you just don't. And a lot of the guys nowadays are missing out on that. They're missing that part of it, of what the joys of owning the older cars that are a little quirky, and stories about them breaking down or doing this or doing that. I mean, it's going to be a little scary to see what the next 10 to 20 years bring when it comes to that. Between getting rid of the gasoline engines and getting rid of a lot of these these stories and these interactions and these relationships that people have. And but I think that we really need to have it, make a conceded a definite effort in pushing these stories and what's important.
No, I totally agree with that. I think, last week, I just for giggles, it stopped raining up here in the Bay Area for a little while, and I managed to pull the Charger out of the garage, and took it out, did a little burnout with it, had a little fun, put about 150 miles on it, and I just posted up. I'm like, I'm gonna try to put 10K on it this year. Now,
Yeah,
10,000 miles is a lot of miles put on a car in 1 year for a lot of people, much less
anybody.
a 60-year-old muscle car,
Yeah,
right? But that's where the stories come in. What I didn't expect were the 50 or so DMs that I got, right? And the, 65 comments or whatever it was of people going, just tell me where you're going to be and we'll meet you there.
yeah.
And that was really cool. That was something I didn't expect. And I feel like people are looking for some kind of catalyst to give them an excuse to get out and drive their vehicles, right?
Yeah.
So like if we put on an event and say, Hemmings is doing an event in I don't know, Napa, California, we're going to run from Napa down to Monterey, down to Los Angeles in 4 days. Like that's an excuse. That's a reason for people to do stuff. And that's a reason for people to bring the vehicles out and start to make memories and start to drive them. And I think that's one of the key, most important things.
The car,
Everybody.
I was going to say the cars and coffee, model is exactly for that reason.
Totally.
When I brought it to the East Coast, I stole the idea from the Donut Derelicts, and then we had Crystal Cove here on the
Mm-hmm.
West Coast. When I brought that over to the East Coast, when I worked at DuPont Registry, the idea was that, look, it's 2 hours on a Saturday morning. It's 7 a.m. to 9
Right.
a.m. Early enough for you to go and take your kids to soccer and do the things you have to do on a Saturday and still be responsible. But once a month, for 2 hours, you know that you get a chance to take your car out, be with other car guys,
Correct.
not having to detail the car, not having to wash the car, not having to worry about judges, not having to worry about, unfolding your chair and having and pulling out a Mai Tai and sitting there
Right.
drinking like whatever. You just go for a couple hours, have some
To have fun.
coffee, talk cars,
Yeah.
and that's it. And that's why that model. Now listen, it's gotten a little out of control, and there's been all kinds of different variations of it, things like that. But the core idea behind it is exactly what you're talking about. Just go for a couple hours and just
Yeah.
do what you
That's
love.
it. That's it. I think if anything happens in 2024, if we can, keep kind of motivating people to do that, whether they go to a car show that is just a hot rod show or an import show or a Euro
Yeah.
show, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. We have shows out there. We have the Carson Coffee. We have, things like Radwood and all these other wonderful curated
Yeah.
shows that are fantastic. As enthusiasts, you have to get out there and you have to get yourself excited about cars. I think so many times, even as owners, we find ourselves with vehicles that are in the garage, but we don't have a reason to take them out. Sometimes you have to search for the reason, and that's okay. But it doesn't. You have to drive them. You have to get them out. You have
Yep.
to enjoy them. Because a lot of times, if you don't drive a car for 6 or 7 months, and then all of a sudden you start it up and you get back into it, you re-fall in love with the idea of it, and it
Well,
reinvigorates you.
yeah.
And I mean that's listen. I know anytime I have a crappy day, I'll jump in one of the old cars. I feel great, and I love
Well,
it. That's
and
my
and
therapy.
and that's me when with my caddy. I mean, listen, I'm forced when you have a car with four-wheel drum brakes that weighs, close to 6,000
Yeah.
pounds and whatever, like you are forced to slow your entire life down. You're not
Mhm.
texting, you're not doing anything and you're not going anywhere
Right.
fast, and you're not stopping anywhere fast. So it's the same reason when I ride my motorcycle, like that is my time that nothing else in the world can matter because it's dangerous. Like I
Right.
can't do that kind of stuff. But the idea is that, look, call your buddies, do your thing. I mean, listen, you're not going to run a horse in the Kentucky Derby that sat in the barn all year, right? You're going to exercise it, you're going to take it out, you're going to,
Right.
you want to get that thing excited. And it's the same thing, with these old cars. So, call your buddies, call your friends out, or even if you don't, like just go. Listen, if you have a chance to go, you want to run to the grocery store, you need an excuse
Just
to go
do
do
it.
something, just don't take your truck, move some things out of the way, take your car, take your
Right.
motorcycle, take this, take that, and just run an errand. It doesn't matter. Oh, you need paper towels? Great. You know what, honey? I'm going to go take my Model T out and I'm going to
Right.
run and get paper towels. And what's
Right.
going to happen is you pull into that parking lot. When you come out, somebody's going to be taking pictures of that car and they're going to
Right.
ask you questions about that car. And you're going to be excited to tell somebody about that story. That person's going to walk away and be like, oh, I saw the coolest car. I met this guy. He's great. Da, da, da. And that's how all of this goes. But if you take your minivan on a simple run that, listen, you could have, but that's not what we and your viewers and the listeners and stuff are about. We're enthusiasts, and that's what we need to remember.
100%. Well, on that, unfortunately,
Yeah,
this podcast we got to cut a little bit short because
it's okay.
I was having some technical difficulties in 2024 in the beginning of this stupid thing. But yeah, I think that's it. I think this is the beginning of the year. It's early January, right?
Yeah,
Some of us right now have cars that are buried in snow in the garages. Others, like me and Vin, are fortunate enough to live in California. We could drive them year round.
yeah,
But make a conscious choice to, if you have something in the garage, even if it's winter, go out, start it, get yourself re-excited. If you have to tinker with it, get it ready for when the sun shines so that you can go
yep,
out, that you can get in it. You could go to the store with it. You can go to Cars and Coffee with it. You could take your kids out. You could take your spouse out, whatever the case is. But
yep.
more so, just enjoy them because, like Vin said, if people don't see them, people forget about them. And then people lose interest. And then and
Yeah.
that's the last thing enthusiasts need is for other enthusiasts to lose interest because we didn't do our jobs.
Yeah. When have
So
you ever driven your car and somebody didn't smile?
never. No, that's exactly what it's for. And listen, the person that it has to make me, make smile the most is me, and it does that. But the other part is there's no better feeling when somebody comes up to you and says, "Let me talk to you about this car. This is great. I want to see it." That makes you feel like $1,000,000. It's the entry fee into the hobby, and it doesn't matter what you have. It doesn't matter if you have a $2,000 beater if you think it's cool and you enjoy it, I promise you that other people out there will feel the
Somebody out
exact
there.
same.
Somebody out there does.
Yeah.
So
So
that's it. Starting off the year, get out and drive.
get out and drive. That's it. Vinny, thank you so much for coming on the barbecue. It's always
Always
great to see
good.
you. And folks, if you're in the market for that car, obviously go to Hemmings.com and check out our classifieds and marketplace and auction because, well, this is what we do.
Yeah.
And so that's it. Vincent, I will talk to you very soon. And hell, I'll probably even see you in a week or two.
Yeah, yes, you will. You got it.
All right, guys.
I'll
Take
talk to
care.
you later.
Thanks for listening, folks. And again, please subscribe to the Hot Rod Barbecue podcast. If you're on Spotify, check us out there. Subscribe to it on iTunes. And if you are going to go to YouTube, make sure you go to the Hot Rod Barbecue podcast and hit that subscribe button. And we'll come to you every week.